Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act 2011. Debate adjourned. Mr. Taylor speaking.
Honourable members, the Chair will recognize the Honourable Member for Calgary-Currie to continue. The Honourable Member has 7 minutes remaining in his speaking time, and there's a total of 117 minutes of debate remaining should the member so choose to go that far. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Currie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When time expired last week, I was acknowledging that one can make the argument that the Municipal Government Act already provides municipalities with the authority to intervene when construction sites become significantly stalled, suspended, or delayed. And in the case of stalled developments posing a danger to public safety, there doesn't seem to be much argument that it does. Municipalities may issue orders requiring the owner to eliminate the danger to public safety, remove or demolish the structure, fill in the excavation or the hole, and level the site. In a stalled development, dangers to public safety are pretty clear and quantifiable. Shorings, which hold back the land when a basement or an underground parkade, for instance, is excavated, will start to break down over time, allowing the land that they're holding back to cave in. That's dangerous and measurable. City engineers can monitor the condition of those shorings on a regular basis. When they begin to break down, the engineers can measure that, identify it, quantify it, and issue the appropriate order to most likely fill in the excavation. And you can't really argue that point. When delayed developments are merely unsightly, however, no matter how much of an eyesore they are by any common sense consensus definition, the MGA as it is currently worded seems somewhat less certain about how much authority a municipality really has to step in on behalf of the neighboring residents and businesses in order that something be done about it. And this, Mr. Speaker, I believe is the crux of the matter. If we at the provincial level argue that our laws give municipalities sufficient authority to address a particular issue, and the municipalities argue that our laws do not, then we're at a bit of an impasse. The neighbours complain to the city refuses to act, citing insufficient authority. The neighbours turn to their MLA, who in turn inquires of the appropriate people within the provincial government, only to be told that the city does have the requisite authority, and we're back to square one. Who wins? Well, I'm not certain anybody does, Mr. Speaker, but I can tell you for certain who loses: the neighbours, surrounding businesses, and the community as a whole. So, Mr. Speaker, a brief lesson in the ongoing history of stalled developments. There is a place in Calgary-Currie on 4th Street Southwest in Mission known none too affectionately as the Pit. The good news, Mr. Speaker, is that the owner of the site just last week began construction of a long-awaited development at that location. The Pit, Mr. Speaker, celebrated its 10th anniversary this summer. Perhaps I should have said marked its 10th anniversary. That's more appropriate. It was hardly a celebration. 10 years of partial completion, 10 years as a hole in the ground, mostly filled with what will become the development's underground parkade. Most of the concrete for that parkade was poured before the original developer went belly up. 10 years of ugly plywood construction hoarding covered in peeling paint and various posted bills running the length of an entire block along a street that once was, and hopefully soon will be again, one of the most vibrant shopping and dining destinations in Calgary's inner city. For 10 years, apartment and condo dwellers have gazed down on this eyesore from their balconies. People can't really see much of anything from street level except the hoarding, crowding the sidewalk, making you feel as though it might push you out into traffic. Hardly makes for a pleasant stroll. Along that stretch of 4th Street, in recent years, we've seen a lot of empty storefronts, and it's the broken window theory on a bigger scale. When vandals break a window and the owner doesn't replace it, it sends a message that people don't really care about their neighborhood. When a development is stalled in mid-construction for months or years, it sends a similar message, and shoppers and diners go elsewhere. About 15 months ago, I attended a meeting at City Hall in Calgary with the ward aldermen, community representatives, the city solicitor, and senior officials from the city engineering and planning departments to discuss the Pit, and I was told what the community had already been told, that the City of Calgary did not feel that it had sufficient authority under the Municipal Government Act to move against the owner and require it to improve the appearance of the site. Were the city to try under the existing provisions of the MGA, I was told it would end up in court in a fight that the city might very well lose and which would cost a lot of taxpayers' money in any event. So I asked the city solicitor to help me draft a private member's bill that would rectify the situation. He did so. I brought the wording to Parliamentary Council, who put it into the language of this Assembly. I took that back to the city solicitor, asked if our wording met his test. He said that it did, and this is the bill that you have before you today. This bill, if approved, will give local governments clear authority to deal with what is absolutely, incontrovertibly, a local problem. It's a local problem that local residents should be able to ask their local government to solve and to hold their local government accountable for solving it. The government of Alberta has no particular interest, Mr. Speaker, in somebody's hole in the ground. And yet, Mr. Speaker, these holes and pits and partially built parkades and building superstructures sticking unfinished as much as 3 stories above ground and partially built townhouse complexes and subdivisions are local problems in local communities all over Alberta. The pit at age 10 is a mere child compared to the granddaddy of them all, development in Lethbridge that's been stalled for 30 years. In the course of researching this bill, we've discovered stalled developments in Two Hills, Sylvan Lake, Bonaccord, elsewhere in Calgary, Edmonton, Sundre, Medicine Hat. The town of Irricana tells us that it has no control over any undeveloped land or partially developed land within its limits. It's all owned by developers who sought to build and either ran out of money or time or the will to finish what they started. Mr. Speaker, this bill does not seek to expropriate property or to cancel development permits or to keep developers from building. This bill understands business conditions in Alberta can change dramatically from the time a development permit is granted to the time the development is completed. It does not force a developer to continue building when it makes no economic sense or to prevent him from resuming construction when conditions improve. But it does give the municipality the clear authority to say that you just can't delay building the unfinished project indefinitely without giving the enjoyment of the space back to the surrounding community so that you're not hampering its vitality and making it less desirable for businesses, residents, and as a destination for visitors. This bill will give municipalities certainty and confidence to act on behalf of their citizens in the interests of strong, safe, and attractive communities, and it will give the citizens a clear path to understand who to hold accountable for this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister for the Solicitor General and Public Security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've examined this bill for quite some time, and actually it first came to my attention when the member for Calgary-Currie came to me. And I know he's got several of my fridge magnets, so I have to say the first duty of an MLA, of course, is to listen to his or her constituents. So I'm happy to do that to the member for Calgary-Currie. I do think that the member has done actually quite a good job on this particular bill. The bill proposes to amend the Municipal Government Act in order to clarify the power that municipalities in the province have when dealing with delayed or stalled construction projects. And specifically, getting down to the details, this bill would amend sections 541A, 546.1, 546.2, and 551 to, that's 550 sub 1, to direct reference for delayed construction developments as situations where the municipality can intervene. Now, pursuant to the member's legislation as he's proposed, municipalities would have the authority to require the owner of a delayed project to improve the appearance of the site within a specified time frame or to remove any structures and level the site. Now, from discussions I've had with this member, the motivation behind Bill 205 is to improve the overall safety and appearance of our communities. I'd also have to say that it has something to do with property values. When you have a construction site that has been delayed, it can often attract crime, as has the case in this member's constituency. There have been crime issues regarding crime in that particular area. It has become an eyesore, and it may be a negative drag on people's property values nearby, and I'd say through no fault of their own. Mr. Speaker, the Municipal Government Act as exists today, along with the Safety Codes Act, they both currently contain provisions that would allow municipalities in Alberta to address delayed construction projects within their boundaries. And I think it's fairly clear. However, Bill 205 may have the potential to strengthen and clarify the actions municipalities may take to deal with the extended construction delays in their jurisdictions. This could be done at the discretion of the municipality on an individual or on a site-by-site basis, up to the local municipality to do, and that's the key. It's not the province actually coming in to go and tell the municipality what to do. Rather, we're just empowering the municipality to have these particular options. Now, Mr. Speaker, as we all know, the economic situation can change at any time, particularly in this province with very little advance notice. And we don't have to look too far to the history books to see what a drastic effect that changing economic circumstances can have on the construction of the development centre, particularly in that member's constituency, which has a lot of high value, high cost per square foot properties. Now that we are well on the way to road to economic recovery, circumstances for Alberta businesses have improved, construction companies are able to continue with their projects as planned. But to this point, Bill 205 does not seem unreasonable to me at all. In fact, just the opposite. There are many reasons why a construction project or development could be stalled or delayed, not the least of which could be for financial reasons. And of course, we don't want to punish the neighboring businesses, the neighboring residents in the event that happens. I can only imagine how many calls this member has got from neighboring residents of the so-called pit on 4th Avenue. Many people have in fact even called me, and it's nowhere near my own constituency. So at the same time, it's important that municipalities have a process, that they have a mechanism to, through which they can motivate private companies to continue their work, and then when possible, without leaving an eyesore, construction sites inactive for months on end, or in fact 10 years on end, as this member has mentioned. Now, we cannot predict how economic circumstances over the life of a construction project might change. I think it's important to find the right balance between strengthening a municipality's powers to manage local construction projects and providing a productive business environment. And the key again, Mr. Speaker, is this bill has absolutely no intention of specifically handcuffing a local municipality, but rather just empowering them and giving them the tools to deal with the situations such as in this member's constituency. So I believe that this legislation, if properly implemented and enforced, could improve development in Alberta communities, and as well, if done properly, Bill 205 could give municipalities a greater ability to oversee the activities that are taking place in their respective jurisdictions. By developing some of these responsibilities, our government will have more time to improve programs and legislation at a provincial level. And in addition, Bill 205 could have the effect of speeding up the construction process in Alberta, meaning that our cities and towns could actually develop more quickly, but also in a more responsible and more sustainable manner. One of our government's priorities, after all, is to make Alberta the best place to live, work and raise a family. And as part of that is ensuring that our streets are presentable and aesthetically pleasing for visitors to residents. But also specifically dealing with my current ministry, Mr. Speaker, we have to encourage community safety. And I know that particular site in the member's constituency on 4th Street, that has become a real cesspool of crime. There's been drug trafficking there. There has been prostitution there. Probably some other crime that we don't know about as well. And that doesn't build for a solid community in Calgary or anywhere else in this province. So I wanted to say that I think municipalities themselves have a big role to play in this whole process. And another way that our government can ensure that Alberta remains the best jurisdiction in Canada is by creating a favourable business climate for entrepreneurs and giving them the best possible chance for success. After having weathered the recent economic storm and emerged the strongest financial position of any jurisdiction in North America, there is a strong argument to be made that our current legislation is working, but at the same time, Bill 205 could help development happen more quickly in our province by incenting construction companies to complete projects on time. So in sense, the bill could potentially enhance our current legislation and, again, empower municipalities to make appropriate decisions when, unfortunately, there are construction stalls or there are construction delays. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the honourable member again for bringing forward this piece of legislation. I do think it's an important discussion we need to continue having. And I wanted to mention as well, in my previous ministry in Housing and Urban Affairs, we dealt with some projects that progressed slowly and raised concerns by the local community. At this point, I'm not. Bill 205, I think, is really a good fresh start, and I do think, as a government, in the future, we may want to look at adopting some of the principles, in fact, under Bill 205. I can also tell, as the previous Minister of Housing, many people had consulted me about that particular area, and we have to remember that if we don't have a process like this, who ends up paying for this? Well, the neighboring businesses could end up paying for this. The neighboring people who live there through decreased property values may end up paying for this. And at the end of the day, if the taxpayer is the one that has to actually go in and step up to the plate and actually improve these particular sites, well, all of us end up paying for it through increased taxes. I don't think that's right, Mr. Speaker. I think that we need a process in place that, in the event that someone does decide to go into a construction project, we have to know that they have a responsibility to the community, and that responsibility is that in the event that there is some sort of stall in construction for a long and protracted period, well, you know what? That particular developer has to step up, because it's not just their particular property; it's the entire community's, and we end up paying for it through increased crime costs, but also, as I mentioned, the property externalities as well. In an economics textbook going back to first-year university university, I recall something called an external diseconomy, and that, in fact, is what this member is seeking to remedy. So I also know that this member has spoken to several members of City Council who have voiced their support for me as well, and I thank him for doing his homework in that respect, because it looks like that the local City Council wants this bill passed as well. I would want to say that I will be supporting this bill as it goes forward. Occasionally the opposition does come up with some good ideas, Mr. Speaker, and this is one of them. I know that this is a free vote in our caucus, and I would encourage all members on all sides of the House and all parties to consider supporting this bill, because it is a good deal for it does address a significant issue in Calgary and Edmonton, but also throughout the entire province. Thank you very much. I'll take my seat.
Honourable member for Calgary-Buffalo.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it is a privilege, as always, to rise and discuss this piece of legislation. I will put at the start, I will be supporting this piece of legislation because it's a good, forward-looking bill that addresses concerns in an area that has been dealing with an unfortunate situation for some length of period of time. As the honourable member from Calgary-Currie indicated, this pit has been in the area for 10 years, and I believe this legislation will propose a solution to allow for local governments, local communities to address situations like this where buildings or properties have been purchased and started development on, and for one reason or other do not get finished. And as the members before me have said, we understand that sometimes a project that starts out doesn't get finished. Either the economics have changed, the time frame has changed, or the like. But nevertheless, that developer or that individual or the local government should have the ability to offer solutions to a community that finds this untasteful, finds this unnecessary, and in fact impacts many things that were said earlier. The property values, impacts the crime that's going on in that community, impacts businesses that are able to develop and flourish, and overall brings down the quality of life in that community. And we all know that this bill, Bill 205, attempts to adjust the MGA, the Municipal Government Act. As we know, the MGA is enabling legislation that allows for prescribing prescriptive rules on how our local communities govern themselves. I believe that the MGA, if altered in this way, would be strengthened to allow local communities to do things for themselves that they see fit. And that's the direction we'd want the MGA to play, to allow for prescriptive remedies that allow for local decision-making, that allows for the local people at the government level to deal with the situation and address the problem. And what this bill does, it seeks to find that balance, find that ability to allow for constituents and people alike to go to their local councillor, discuss a situation, and have that local councillor bring the information before their civic body and address a situation that has caused a great deal of concern. And it sounds like all over this province, not only the Beltline in Calgary, but I believe from Three Hills to Trochu to Lloydminster to Hardisty to Hanna to Hazard could all use the MGA being amended in this fashion. For if they do not have a problem like this now, they may at some time have a situation like this in the future. That's why I believe this bill works. That's why I'm supportive of it. I can also say I have a little bit of a personal interest, although this is not economic or anything of that nature, for it would then be a conflict for me to speak. But I spend quite a bit of time in that neighborhood. I go for coffee at the Purple Perk restaurant, which is near the pit. I go for the odd beverage at the Earls or the other pubs in the neighborhood. I even have seen the Honourable Solicitor General in the neighborhood, enjoying the various shops and the various locales and the various restaurants and the various pubs in the neighborhood. It is truly a remarkable community that adds both that has a livability to it, but also has a sense of thriving businesses. And this is being lost to a little bit, to a certain extent, with the pit. And it has caused many members of the community to become, I'll use very angered that they have been unable to deal with this local situation. And I would like to applaud the member from Calgary-Currie for diligently working with his community on this issue. He's taken their matters to heart, put it forward in a bill, and its proposed solutions, not merely he hasn't just proposed a solution, he's acted on their suggestions so that people have an ability to hopefully deal with this concern going forward. So I, like the Solicitor General and the member from Calgary-Currie, is supportive of this bill. I'd encourage all members to support it. It's a very good bill, and I think if they looked at it from that perspective, their communities could use it, and it would come into play to alleviate some angst all over Alberta. But thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and we'll leave it at that.
On my list here, I have Honour Member Edmonton McClung, Edmonton Decor, Strathcona. So Honour Member for Edmonton McClung.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a pleasure to rise today to join my honourable colleagues in the debate of Bill 205, or the Municipal Government Amendment Act 2011, sponsored by the members of Calgary-Currie. I would first like to thank the honourable member for Calgary-Currie for bringing forward this legislation. After all, municipalities are at the heart of our province, and it is imperative that we do everything we can to ensure our municipalities stay as vibrant as they already are. So I commend the honourable member for proposing a solution on the issue that is prevalent in some municipalities, the issue of delayed construction sites that are unsightly, dangerous, or both. This legislation would amend 4 sections of the Municipal Government Act, 541A, 54161, 5462, and 5501. It amends these sections in order to give municipalities the explicit authority to regulate construction sites and projects that are significantly delayed or otherwise halted. Mr. Speaker, I think that all members would agree that it is important for municipalities to have the ability to force the cleanup of construction sites that are dangerous or unsightly. After all, there are few things that are more detrimental to the beauty of a municipality than a project that has been stored indefinitely. As well, we want to minimize the risk of accidents or injuries that may occur around abandoned construction site. Nor do we want to put workers in adjacent construction sites at the risk of falling debris from construction whose completion has been delayed. That being said, Mr. Speaker, I also think it is important to acknowledge the fact that the province ought to give ways to municipalities in certain jurisdictional matters. Our government understands the importance of decision-making at the local level, and I believe that the Municipal Government Act is one of the most important laws that we have in our province. And through the Municipal Government Act, municipalities already have some authorities to regulate and deal with construction that has been delayed. This is something that must be taken into consideration as we debate the merits of Bill 205. Mr. Speaker, we have some of the best municipalities in the world. Countless towns and cities in Alberta have a unique character that is emphasized by their cleanliness, safety, and diversity. The Municipal Government Act is an important piece of legislation that is properly balanced authority that should be delegated to the local level with authority that should be delegated to the province. And the Act helps municipalities maintain strong and healthy communities. Mr. Speaker, the Municipal Government Act is a lengthy piece of legislation, and it takes some time to find the sections of the Act that are relevant to the particular issue of delayed construction. First, I want to talk about Section 54161 of the Act, which begins by stating, if, in the opinion of a designated officer, a structure, excavation or hole is dangerous to public safety or property because of its unsightly condition is detrimental to the surrounding area, the designated officer may, and the section goes on to state that a designated officer can require the owner of such a site to do a number of things, such as level the site, eliminate any danger to public safety caused by the site, and improve the appearance of the site. For those of you who are wondering what a designated officer is, it is an individual appointed by a municipality who has a power to oversee certain jurisdictional matters. So the city auditor for Edmonton, for example, is a designated officer who has the power to oversee certain issues of a county nature. Mr. Speaker, this section is an important one, and I encourage all members to read it in its entirety in order to fully understand its scope. And in my opinion, this section gives municipalities the authority to handle construction sites that are delayed or otherwise unsightly. So I'm not totally convinced that the amendment the honourable member of the Calgary-Currie proposes will give municipalities any additional powers with regards to the managing construction projects. Another point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that the local problems ought to be solved by municipalities. Of course, this does not mean we are dissolved of any responsibilities when it comes to regulating the actions that municipalities can take. But it does mean that once we give municipal governments sufficient authority to solve a problem, we should allow them to derive a solution. Indeed, municipalities such as the County of Strathcona have used the power bestowed upon them by the Municipal Government Act to pass bylaws that deal with the dangerous or unsightly premises. In the case of the County of Strathcona, the relevant bylaw is 802007, and this bylaw allows a designated officer to issue an order to improve an unsightly or dangerous premise by demolishing the structure or filling in the excavation and levelling the site. I believe that bylaws passed at the local level, such as bylaw 802007 in Strathcona, are the best way to solve the problem of delayed construction sites. By allowing municipalities to take care of the issues at the local level, we are limiting bureaucracy and respecting the right of municipalities to govern as they wish. In summary, Mr. Speaker, the issue of delayed construction sites, which are undoubtedly an eyesore, is certainly an important one. However, I think that the Municipal Government Act already gives a great deal of authority to municipalities to deal with this issue. In particular, Section 5461, as it currently reads, gives municipalities a range of options to deal with construction sites that a designated officer determines are either dangerous or unsightly. Furthermore, other sections of the Municipal Government Act allows municipalities to make bylaws respecting the cleanup of delayed construction sites, as has been done in the County of Strathcona. Given the power that the municipalities have under this section, I wonder whether the changes proposed in Bill 205 would make any tangible difference in their ability to deal with the construction delays. However, Mr. Speaker, this is an interesting idea, so I'm looking forward to hearing what others have to say on this matter. I would once again like to thank the Honourable Member for Calgary-Currie for bringing forth this piece of legislation, and I commend him for expressing concern about an issue that is impacting some of our municipalities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Edmonton-Decore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased today to rise and speak on Bill 205, the Municipal Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act 2011. I first would like to thank the Honourable Member for Calgary-Currie for providing the Legislature with the opportunity to speak on this particular issue of delayed construction sites within the province of Alberta, and more specifically to have the opportunity to speak on this. And I would like the member for Calgary-Currie to know that although that our calendars didn't line up to have a face-to-face discussion about the proposal, I would like him to know that I have given thoughtful and serious consideration of the proposals that we are discussing this afternoon.
You have.
Bill 205, Mr. Speaker, would amend several sections of the Municipal Government Act with the intent of providing municipalities across the province with clear authority to deal appropriately with delayed construction sites. And, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that this is very appropriate timing because it's my understanding that the Municipal Government Act is moving forward for a review. And so the subject matter under discussion is very appropriate because of the other review of the MGA. Mr. Speaker, any construction project that is significantly stalled, delayed, or suspended for an unreasonable length of time would be subject to interference from the municipality. It falls under their responsibility. If a designated officer feels that a significant delay has occurred in the construction of a development, the officer may issue written orders to the owner of the project requiring improvement to the appearance or to demolish and level the particular site. In the instance that the site contains an excavation or hole, the owner would be required to fill in the excavation and level the site. Mr. Speaker, I respect what the Honourable Member is aiming to accomplish with this particular amendment, and delayed construction sites can from time to time be an eyesore and a source of frustration for residents in the local community or in areas where they occur, and I understand that. However, Mr. Speaker, municipalities know that they have the authority to resolve these issues, but I have heard that in some instances within municipalities across the province, perhaps there is a bit of confusion around natural person power. So the authority is granted by the current Municipal Government Act. However, I think what is being asked is some clarity, and certainly this particular amendment is providing just that. As stated in the Act, municipalities are able to issue orders regarding structures, excavations, or holes considered unsightly or dangerous to public safety. The Act also refers to structures, holes, or excavations that are determined to be detrimental to the surrounding area. These areas are clearly under the jurisdiction of the municipality in which it resides. The honourable member has used a construction site in Calgary that has remained as an open excavation for 9 years as an example of a stalled project, which is a very good example for consideration. And it's my understanding that local residents in the area have been quite frustrated about the goings-on of that particular delay while construction has been on and off again, and I understand that. I would imagine that a site such as this has been delayed for 9 years could be classified as detrimental to the surrounding area, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the municipality should have reasonable authority to address the matter. However, at times, there's always extra questions raised. And it also is, I can't say for sure whether the municipality is using the current legislation to the fullest extent to resolve the issue. But, you know, as a government, we have to listen, always consider other aspects, and try to help and intervene where possible. And I think that the intent of this particular amendment is certainly going in that direction and is allowing for further considerations by the government. Mr. Speaker, municipalities, as I had touched upon, hold the power to regulate construction sites so long as that they are detrimental or unsightly in the opinion of the designated officer. However, as we can see, at least one site has gone for over 9 years without being completed or considered by the municipality, and that concerns me in particular, that definitive action hasn't been taken. If I may quote, Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court of Canada has indicated by saying lawmaking and implementation are often best achieved at the level of government that is not only affected but also closest to the citizens affected, and thus should be most responsive to their needs. And I believe that this quote really is germane and says it perfectly. The current legislation that we have in place grants municipalities the power to deal with this particular issue, yet they have until now not dealt with the issue, and there should be further considerations regarding the current piece of legislation. So at this point, Mr. Speaker, I have to say that I want the member from Calgary-Currie to know that I support the direction of this amendment, and I would be encouraging all members of the legislature to give serious and further consideration, given that the Municipal Government Act is under consideration for review. In that process, they've just started, and this amendment fits quite nicely into that review process. So I, therefore, would be supporting these directions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other honourable member wishing to speak? Honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Comments brief, but I do appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes to speak about 205, the Municipal Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act. I know that the member for Calgary-Currie has done a great deal of work on this bill and has had extensive consultations, as he has said, with some of the municipalities. We know that they do have the authority under the Municipal Government Act and their own bylaws to deal with these delayed construction sites. But having said that, I think listening to the comments, and I'm not going to repeat them, of the member for Calgary-Edgemont and Edmonton McClung, Edmonton Decor, just would like to say that I think the honourable member for Calgary-Currie has done a good job on this bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I will be supporting Bill 205, and I would urge all other members of our Assembly to do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Advanced Education and Technology.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the opportunity to rise and speak for just a moment on this important issue. And I'd like to thank the member from Calgary-Currie for bringing forward Bill 205, the Municipal Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege of serving on Lethbridge City Council for 9 years, and I can honestly tell you some of the most difficult decisions that we have to make are around issues like this, around issues with properties where construction may have been delayed or stopped. You heard from the member here about a project called the Atrium Building. Now, the Atrium Building in Lethbridge has gone on something longer than 30 years. I don't even know the exact amount of time because I can't remember far enough back. But it was many, many years ago. It might even be closer to 40 years ago that building was started. It's in the middle of the downtown. 3 floors were poured in concrete, and then the building sat. Mr. Speaker, that building has sat for 3 or 4 generations. It has been boarded and unboarded. It has had people in it and playing there. Mr. Speaker, it has been unsafe. And I know during the time on City Council, trying to deal with these kinds of issues was so difficult. And Mr. Speaker, I commend the member, and I had an opportunity to sit and meet with the member from Calgary-Currie and talk about this issue. And so I went back to my community and talked to my council about the issue, and they strongly supported just a word from the government to say, you have the authority to do this. We know that within the Municipal Government Act it appears that we may have the authority to do this, but we would like that clarified. We'd like to know that when these issues come up, we as municipalities can and will be able to deal with them. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my community, on behalf of communities across the province, I would ask members of this Assembly to please consider supporting this legislation. I believe it will assist during the review of the Municipal Government Act. It will assist in some direction to the minister, and it will allow him to move forward and ultimately see direction to municipalities where they can deal with these important issues around unsightly premises, construction sites that have been delayed, and ultimately buildings that have never been completed. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. I again compliment the member from Calgary-Currie for the time and commitment he's put into this bill. We've met at least twice on it, and I know he's phoned me a number of times, and I do appreciate his dedication. Thank you so much.
Honourable member for Rocky Mountain House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too want to congratulate the honourable member from Calgary-Currie for bringing this forward, because certainly it clarifies what a municipality has currently. It leaves no doubt. The honourable member in his speech mentioned the fact that Sundre was one of the places there was a problem. Unfortunately, this doesn't go quite far enough to solve the problem in Sundre. The problem there, where a developer started doing a bunch of work, took deposits from, because it was a subdivision, he took deposits from some of the people that were going to be residents of the area, and then the company went broke. Well, now, of course, the municipality is sitting there with some holes in the ground, some infrastructure like water and sewer pipes partially completed, and really, quite frankly, quite a mess. But even worse, the people that made the down payments have lost their money. And so, while this is good, it's a good start. There would need to be some other kind of remedy to solve the kind of problem that is in the town of Sundre. So once again, I'll be supporting this. I think it's a good move in the right direction, and certainly as we move forward and do the review on the Municipal Government Act, this will be a good foundation to deal with that type of issue. Thank you.
Any other honourable member wishing to speak on the bill? Honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Yes, I'd also like to take the opportunity to rise and speak briefly on Bill 207. Again, with many of the other members, I'd like to offer my compliments to the member from Calgary-Currie, who certainly, I think, pretty much must have spent his summer meeting with every member of the legislature trying to get their support for this bill. So I know that takes a lot of work, and it was certainly something that mattered a lot to him to do as something to assist the members of his community. I think it's an issue. I mean, many members have already outlined the fact that the current authority under the Municipal Government Act may be unclear in terms of whether municipalities can assert this type of authority with derelict developers when that opportunity exists. And it seems to me that the public policy issue here is that this clearly relates to communities. It relates to the economic health of communities. It relates to the ability of people on the ground to improve the environment within which they live, and also the local economy within which they live. And so it's really important that the government that is closest to those issues have the ability to respond to members of the community who would rightly raise issues with them about it when there are problems. So it seems to me that there's certainly nothing that can be negatively perceived, thank you, or any sort of negative consequence to this bill, and it certainly would clarify authority in a way that I think most members of this House believe it ought to be clarified. So that's very useful. It's interesting, of course, that it appears as though there's really a number of members on both sides of the House that support this bill. So it really is quite unfortunate that we're probably only going to get the bill into second reading with the number of weeks of sitting that we've had in the House this year. We're at Bill 207, and I'm afraid that Bill 207 will not, or sorry, 205. My goodness, we've only gotten to Bill 205 of private members' bills, and so where we have something that I think everyone can agree is an indication of good public policy, it's unfortunate that we're not able to have enough weeks in the Assembly to actually get it all the way through so that it would become law. But nonetheless, hopefully members of the government will have due regard to the points raised here and the general appearance of consensus on the issue, and move forward to bring in this kind of legislation when the opportunity next arises, and certainly our caucus would support that. Thank you.
Any other honourable member wishing to speak on Bill 205? Seeing none, the chair shall now call the honourable member for Calgary-Currie to. We have 5 minutes to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a simple, straightforward piece of legislation. It was specifically designed that way so that it would minimize unforeseen consequences. There are always problems with that happening potentially, and the simpler, I think, and more straightforward you make a piece of legislation. This one, in essence, really focuses in on one section, Section 546 of the Municipal Government Act, the less chance you have of those unforeseen consequences. I want to thank members on all sides of the House for speaking in support of this bill. I do believe that it is a good piece of legislation in that it gives clear authority to local governments to solve local problems. I think that's in the interests of all Albertans, and I thank everyone in the House for speaking to this bill.
The honourable member for Calgary-Currie has closed the debate. Chair shall now call the question. Honourable member for Calgary-Currie has moved second reading of Bill 205, Municipal Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act 2011. Those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. The motion is carried.
Bill 205, Municipal Government Delayed Construction Amendment Act 2011, is now read a second time. Under Public Bills and Orders other than Government Bills and Orders, for second reading, Bill 207, Seniors Property Tax Deferral Act, Mrs. Jablonski.
Honourable member for Red Deer North, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise today and begin second reading debate on Bill 207, Seniors Property Tax Deferral Act. Mr. Speaker, I'm bringing this piece of legislation forward because I believe that it could have a significantly positive effect on senior citizens in Alberta. Bill